One of the things that I think a lot of people who potentially could have ADHD or do have ADHD is working out whether they actually have it. And again, to be clear, I haven't been officially tested or medically tested or whatever the formal testing procedure is. I've just been told by people and they know that it's highly likely that I have it. And I do think at the end of the day, if you have very similar symptoms and the way to treat them is relatively similar, then that's the main thing that counts. But I wanted to, I was thinking about my school experience because one of the things that I noticed that I had in common with a lot of people who have ADHD is their experience in school. And going back to primary school, which here in Australia is up to the age of 12. So starting from kindergarten up to what we call year six, so about the age of 12, I coasted through school ridiculously easy. I've heard other people with ADHD have a similar experience, and I'm not saying that it's a purely an ADHD thing, but I remember basically coming first at whatever I wanted to come first at. So in my school, it's a very academic and competitive school. So at the end of the year, we'd have exams twice a year, and at the end of the year, we'd have an assembly, and they'd announce who came first, and I came first. I don't think they did it in years 1 and 2, but they came first. I came first in year 3, came first in year 4, and it was just so easy because it was very basic, sort of just how to spell, how to add up, all the sort of stuff that just in my brain made sense. I didn't have to think about it, and I picked things up very quickly, those things anyway. And then I got bored of it, coming first. It was too easy, there was no challenge. And so in year 5, I was like, whatever. I distinctly remember, I don't exactly remember when, but I remember deciding in my head that this is so easy, can't be bothered trying to come first anymore. And then I came second or third. They had what's called general merit, and that's so you get ducks or first, then there were 2 general merits, second and third. And so I ended up getting only a general merit. And I just remember then suddenly getting really pissed off. I hadn't wanted to come first, as I said. I decided I couldn't be bothered. But then when I didn't come first, I got so annoyed that I was like, okay, I'm going to come first again in year 6. And I did. I didn't study harder. I didn't take any tuition. Back in those days, after school tuition really wasn't a thing. And I came first without trying. I just decided because I wanted it. And I thought that was a bit odd. And at the end of year 6, so that's then going into high school for us in Australia. P.S. If you want to know why I'm out of breath, I mean, you can see this, but you can watch yesterday's video. At the end of year 6, we get scholarship offers for high school, which is a big deal because even back then, private school was a lot of money. And, if you get a 50% scholarship even, that can be a lot of money saved for your parents off of your education bills. And it was based off our year 6 results, which I've already told you I came first. But there were separate kind of scholarship exams, so you didn't, just because you came first in your school, didn't mean you had done well in the scholarship exams. Obviously, there'd be a high correlation, more than likely. But I got called up. I was in class and I got called up with a mate of mine. I still remember his name, John Barker. And I didn't know what it was. I assumed it was good because I was in school. I never did anything bad. I was always a good boy. And got pulled in front of the headmaster, who I really liked and respected. I always got on better with my certain ones of my teachers anyway, much more so than my classmates. I think that's another thing, because you can have adult conversations with them. Anyway, got pulled up in front of him. His name was Mr. Maffey. I don't know if he's still with us. Lovely guy. And I don't exactly remember what he said, but it was like, oh, congratulations, you guys have scholarships. Now, I didn't just get 1 scholarship. I didn't just get 2. I got 3. 3 scholarship offers. One for the the high school version of where I was at. One for school near here called Knox, and another one called Newington. And the one for my school, Sydney Grammar, was a 50% scholarship. For Knox was 75%, and for Newington was 100%. And I ended up taking the one to Sydney Grammar because I figured, hey, this is where my friends are, so I'm going to stay here. And there was no problem with that. But the point of the matter is, I came dux of year 6, which means I came dux of the entire school because it was only a primary school. And my name to this day is still up on the board there, which, I went to see maybe a couple of years ago, and I didn't recognize much of the school, but I was proud, just, stuff kind of cool to see your name up somewhere, probably for the rest of time. Anyway, the point of that was that I didn't have to study for any of that. Yes, I learned the stuff, but I learned it because I enjoyed it, and it wasn't effortful in any way. And moving into year 7, so high school. Now, going into high school, you had an influx of students from our brother school. So I was in St Ives, Sydney Grammar St Ives. There was another primary school in Edgecliff, so Sydney Grammar Edgecliff. And then we all came together in the high school, which was in the city of Sydney, called College Street. But you also have people from outside, from other schools, people who had to work hard, to be fair, to get in and to be selected, and obviously were highly intelligent as well. Also, as you know, when you get into high school, it kind of really stops being common sense stuff. Like, I don't mean common sense in that way, but the stuff that you need to get by in everyday life, like adding and spelling and being able to talk. Hopefully by the end, hopefully by the time you're 12, you've got that. So high school for me was a bunch of new people who I didn't really know, didn't really like, didn't really care to like them. The curriculum became different. I remember being told that we had to study ancient Latin. It was compulsory in our school. Distinctly remember thinking, my immediate thought was, what the hell is the point of learning ancient Latin? It's literally a dead language. It's not like I can learn ancient Latin and then have a conversation with someone about it in it. And then I also remember my parents telling me, oh yeah, but that's good if you want to learn French or Italian, it'll be useful because it's somewhat similar. To which I thought, why wouldn't I just learn French or Italian? Why would I learn another language that would be helpful for learning French or Italian? But my point was that these curriculum, it was less about life skills now, and it was more about stuff that you know just to say you know it, or you have to know it to pass an exam, or you have to know it, to be fair, if you want a particular career. And it just didn't have the same interest for me. And I realized then, or I came to realize very quickly, that my natural intelligence, or whatever it was that was in my brain, wasn't going to cut it with these subjects, because they weren't just the 2 plus 2 is 4, and I before E except after C. It was stuff that I would really have to apply myself to, and I say that because I didn't enjoy it. I think a lot of people in primary school would have struggled to learn the stuff that I did, but I enjoyed that. So for me, it was completely effortless. But coming into high school, it was completely different. So moved from quiet suburb to the middle of the city, whole bunch of people I didn't know. Most of the people from my school who had done well and I thought were smart didn't make it into the A class. I was one of only a handful from my school that got into the A class because we were streamed academically. So I didn't know a lot of people. I thought the teachers were not just unfriendly, but they didn't really care to know you. It's not like in the smaller school where you'd get to know your teacher. This one was just like, they just didn't seem to care. They seemed just grumpy all the time. And then the curriculum, as I said, changed. So it wasn't, I mean, say what you will about it, the essence is that I didn't enjoy it. And so going from year 6, where I came first, to year 7, I wouldn't say it was a catastrophe, but academically, I think I came 5th or 6th or something like that. Which, look, given the school that I was at, anyone would say, oh, that was a great result. For me, all that mattered was I'd had to study harder. Probably had to study for the first time, to be frank. And even then, it wasn't good enough to come first. That was kind of a bitter pill to swallow. And I hated year 7 so much, the first year of high school, that I actually ended up skipping school, like truanting, committing truancy. And I got found out, I was almost expelled from the school, which was so ironic given that, I was the good boy and I was a high achiever, I was a perfect student. And then not even a year later, I'm potentially being expelled because I skipped school. I don't know, for you, that's a big deal, but certainly at that time in that school, it was a big deal. And so that sort of begun I don't know, I wouldn't say it was a disdain of the school system, but even when I was back in primary school, I was telling my mum this the other day. I quickly realized that just because someone's a teacher doesn't mean they're always right, and not necessarily deserving of your respect simply because they're the teacher. I remember, for example, in an English class, there was a question about similar, or is it similar words or synonyms for happy. And I put the word buoyant. When someone's buoyant, yes, it means floating, but it also means they're happy. And because the teacher didn't know that, he marked it wrong. He didn't bother to go look at a dictionary or thesaurus. He just marked me wrong. I was like, okay, so I get marked wrong because you're stupid. And then there was another teacher there who was a mother of one of my classmates who decided to, pull me up in front of the whole classroom for talking when I hadn't been talking. So I don't know exactly where she got off doing that, but that's where I quickly developed the belief that just because you're a teacher doesn't mean you're necessarily right, and certainly doesn't mean you deserve my respect. Bear in mind, I'm making up these decisions when I'm like 10 or 11. These are more than 30 years ago, and I still remember this. And so I got into high school, wasn't enjoying it. Another thing that I was highly musical. I started violin at the age of 2, and then, it's different at this day and age where, I don't know, at least going off some of the people I know, the kids seem to only practice when they have a teacher there, but I was practicing, I think, pretty much every day for at least an hour or so. And by this time, it would have been 10, 11, 12 years of doing the violin. So, of course, I was drafted into the orchestra. And I use the word drafted on purpose because I didn't get a choice. It was compulsory. I was good at violin, so I was made to play in the orchestra. This is another thing. In primary school, in year 6, I was in the orchestra there. In year 6, I was the leader of the orchestra because I was the best violinist in the school. But in year 5, I was also the best violinist in the school. There was no one in the year above me who was better than me. But I wasn't allowed to be the leader in year 5 because I wasn't in year 6. It was the year 6's turn. I don't understand that decision to this day. I do understand it more now, but I still think it's a lot of bullshit. I thought the best person should be the person that we put there. But I was drafted into the orchestra in high school, and I wasn't the best anymore because there were boys who were 6 years older than me, and these boys, probably some of them were, I wouldn't say concert violinist material, but they were better than me. So I had no issue with that. But the issue I had was I was forced to join the orchestra. I didn't get a choice, and I didn't think that I had anything related with ADHD at that time. I didn't even know the term, and maybe back then my brain worked differently. Who knows? But I wasn't given a choice. I didn't enjoy it. And so it became one of the things, because I was made to, at one stage, I was playing in the orchestra in rehearsals 6 times a week, Monday through Saturday. The only day we weren't practicing was Sunday. And I just hated that. I really didn't enjoy school. I made a few friends, and probably the fondest memory I have from school was playing basketball with my mates at lunchtime, because I was tall. Even back then, I was like over 6 foot by the time I was 12. So if you look at my primary school photos, it's quite funny because some of the kids are almost literally only half my height. But that's probably my fondest memory. Aside from that, almost getting expelled in year 7. And then finally got towards the end. So here in Australia, that's year 12 when you're 18. And so year 12 would be the final time I'd be playing in the orchestra, but I couldn't keep going with it. I had to stop in year 11 because I just hated it so much. And I didn't enjoy it at all. There was no, I had practiced so much for the school. There was one guy in the school who was better than me. Marshall Kim, I remember him, his name. And I didn't have any, didn't bear any grudge towards him because he was better than me. But he would get all the accolades, all the thanks, all the teachers would, love hanging around him. And here I was slugging away, not out of choice, again, drafted into this orchestra, and no one really gave a shit about me. Um, and it was just, I did not enjoy high school to this day. I didn't think the teachers particularly cared. I didn't see the point to what we were learning. And yet, I say all this to give you an idea how at least my potential ADHD brain works. So primary school came first without trying, apart from year 5 when I just literally decided I couldn't care less. Year 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, my results went down and down and down. So year 7, as I said, I think I came top 5. Year 8, it was top 10. By the time and these are not disastrous because the school I was at was so competitive academically that me and my friends, because our HSC is marked out of 100, so if you get 99, you're in the top 1%. And the question, like the discussion with my peers, wasn't, oh, you're going to get 80 or you're going to get 90. The discussion was 99 what? That's what I need you to understand. It was so competitive that the discussion was, you're going to get 99. That's assumed 99.1, not 99 point what. So I'm just making sure my microphone's still there. And so, in one sense, from year 7 to year 12, I'm going down, 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 down. Year 12, I realize that, hey, I have to go into university. That's just a belief in a lot of families, mine included. And so to get into the university to do the course you want, you need to get as good a mark as you can. I didn't know what I wanted to do in university at that stage, but I knew I wanted to get as good a mark as I can, or I should want. That's a distinction. I should want to get as good a mark as I can. So year 7 to year 12, down, 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 down. Year 12, I decided, okay, I better at least do some of this studying thing, or at least I had been studying in high school. That's unfair, but I realized I better work at this, so I did. And then I came only, I think it was 21st, 22nd, or 23rd in my year, in the final year. But to put this into context, that still got me an HSE score of 99.55. So I was in less than the top half of 1% of all the kids in Australia at that time. And that's what I put that into context. Like, again, I had been studying more than I probably had been before, but there were peers in my grade who had been getting extracurricular tuition in every single subject for probably the entire high school, the whole 6 years of high school. I remember a lot of them would be, oh, what are you doing today? And they'd say, oh, I'm going to tuition for maths. And then the next day, I'm going to tuition for English. And then, oh, I'm going to tuition for science. Every day was tuition, 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 tuition. So, these kids worked hard. I'm not going to disagree with that. A lot of it was rote learning. These were the early days of English teachers beginning to teach essays by getting their kids to memorize them, which I thought, and I still think, is so stupid, because the whole point of essay writing is to be able to think critically on a piece of paper. And these kids could barely speak English, but they were getting better marks than me because their essays had actually been written and formulated in advance by people with PhDs. Of course, the school doesn't see a problem with this. Only now are they beginning to freak out also with AI. But I saw even back then, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, there's another thing. I felt like I had a very strong sense of right and wrong. Not to think that I was always right by any means, but I knew very clearly when something was wrong. And, my peers memorizing essays is clearly wrong if you have any idea as to how the school system works and how essay writing is supposed to work. But as I said, like, 21st is certainly not first, like I was in year 6. 99.55 is hardly a fail, though, is it? And so I remember getting that mark. We got it in the post back in those days. And I think for anyone else, getting 99.55 would be a cause of celebration. For me, it was relief. It was the overwhelming first thing I remember feeling. I collapsed in my bed and went, okay, that's enough to make my parents happy. That may not be an ADHD thing, maybe that's just an Asian thing. But as I said, the whole point of getting this mark was to get into a degree in university. Now, what's a sensible thing to do? At least what did a lot of my friends do? They went into medicine. Why? Because medicine had the highest mark had the highest entrance mark. So back then it was probably about 99 to get into medicine. So I had the marks to get into medicine. And if they didn't have that 99, they were going into law, which had like a 98 or 97 to get in, or dentistry, or being a vet. All those ones were like 95, 96, 97, 98, 99. Me, what do I decide to do? I go, all right, what do I really like? I like planes. I've always loved planes. I've flown a plane myself, I think 3 times. I'm going to become an aeronautical engineer. Why? Because I want to be a test pilot and I want to design my own plane. You know, at that age, your brain doesn't see that might not be possible. You certainly don't know that it's not possible. And I say not possible because it turns out, like in the whole of Australia, all the aeronautical engineers in Australia designed a wingtip, the little curved up wingtip. All of Australia did that. And here I was thinking that me, myself, gets to design a whole plane. In this day and age, by the way, it might be different. I mean, Elon Musk made a whole spaceship by himself, but that's beside the point. I decided I was going to do aeronautical engineering. You know, the entrance mark for aeronautical engineering was, bear in mind, I got 99.55. I think it was 65. It was 65 to 70. So I could have fallen off backwards, injured my right arm, done the exam left-handed, and still would probably have gotten enough marks to get into aeronautical engineering. Why did I do that? Why did I decide aeronautical engineering? Because it took my fancy. This is something that I'm only kind of learning now, like the dopamine, this search for doing things that you enjoy. Even back then, it was running my life. I just didn't know it. I certainly couldn't have worded to you, why didn't I do medicine? I mean, medicine, I would have said, yes, it's a higher paying career. I mean, engineers can get paid very highly, but certainly at the beginning, medicine is a higher salary than you probably get as an entry level engineer. So even back then, I wasn't really thinking about money. I was thinking about doing something because I loved it, doing something because I was interested in it, to be more precise. Didn't know whether I loved it because I hadn't done it before. But I mean, that didn't last very long because it wasn't what, I mean, my engineering degree didn't last very long because it wasn't what I thought it was. It was a lot of lecturers who just didn't give a shit. They were lecturing because I think they had to in order to maintain their position in the faculty so they could keep doing their own research. They didn't give a shit about you. And it was so, I remember beginning to have to take maths class. Now, maths back in primary school, to wind it all the way back, I had no problem with. It was easy. My brain was just wired that way. But I remember coming to sit down, I think it was in a year 3 maths course, and it was calculus in n dimensions. N as in N for Nelly, n dimensions. And I remember sitting down and my first thought was, why do we need to learn about calculus in n dimensions when we live in a 3-dimensional world? Like, can someone explain that to me? Because this is the other thing. I can learn faster than almost anyone else I know, but I need to know why I'm learning it. Now, sometimes it's just competition. Like, if I want to prove that I can learn something faster, that'll get me going. But otherwise, it needs to be something that I can see some use for. I'm not good at just learning stuff to learn stuff, or to be even more exact, I'm not good at learning stuff because someone tells me I have to. And so I just remember sitting there. The lecturer never bothered to explain why we needed to learn this, what the application was, just started writing all these equations on the blackboard, and they just, they were bouncing off my forehead basically. I'm like, what the hell is this? And now it's no longer dy dx, it's like this delta y delta. Like, I don't know what the fuck, like, who gives a shit? I want to design a plane. Show me how to do that. Show me the equations for that. And surely, by the way, the computers can take care of that, because we're not going to trust a human to make calculations on a piece of paper, are we? I mean, you should know it, so it's vaguely right if the computer makes a mistake. But the whole thing was like, even given that I'd been falling down the ranks, so to speak, from year 7 to year 12, I still got an academic scholarship to the University of Sydney, and I still got in the Academic Honour Society called Golden Key, which I would later become vice president of, just because, again, this is the way my brain's wired. I've never thought of myself as intelligent. It's just, I think I'm lucky that my brain is wired in the way that the traditional schooling system, education system in the West works. It's just luck. It's not me that I worked hard, clearly, as I told you. But the cascade downwards continued in university. So first year, the 3 years I was there, first year I coasted by because a lot of it was catch up work for the people coming from other schools who hadn't had as difficult or rigorous a curriculum as we'd had at my very competitive school. So first year I got almost universal high distinctions. I don't know what that's equivalent to in the States or other countries, but it's the best mark you can get. So straight HDs, that's how I got into the academic society. Year two, started getting some distinctions, maybe even a credit. And then year three, which was supposed to be the final year, I remember first semester of year three, because I dropped out of the engineering because I was doing an engineering and science degree. And when I saw that engineering wasn't going to lead me to where I thought it was, and that I could never be a commercial pilot because my eyesight was shit. And by the way, they never told me this at the beginning. I only had my first career briefing in second year after you've dedicated 2 years to the faculty of engineering. That's when they tell you, no, you couldn't fly. Like, thanks, you could have told me that on the open day before I signed up. But anyway, third year, first semester, so first set of exams, I got my first fail. I'd never failed anything before. Passes, credits, whatever, I didn't care, but fail, that really pissed me off. Because I'm like, I don't fail. I'm not a failure. So coming into the second semester, and I'd been getting into extracurricular stuff, girls, drinking, the whole 9 yards, because it's university, right? Or college, it's what you do. But I dropped all of that for the second semester of third year because I was like, I am sick of university. I'm sick of exams. I'm sick of this so-called education. I am out of here. The problem was that one fail would have meant I would have needed to come back at least one additional semester after the third year. And I was like, fuck that. I ain't doing that. So I need to get special dispensation in my final semester to overload myself, take more credit points or more courses than you were supposed to. They let me do that. That was fine. And I managed to pass the final semester and pass on time. But my point was, in that final batch of, so the semester 2 exams of year 3, it was credits, a couple of passes. The only course where I did well was basically a computer science course, and it was a problem solving open equation. It was like a project, kind of like a thesis if you want to think it like that. And we had pick up projects, and I picked this project I look back at it now and go, I realized it was the beginning of AI. I had to design a program that could take in the dictionary converted to an electronic format, and basically turn it into a database. Think of it like a giant Excel sheet. And so you would look at, your brain starts thinking, how could I do that? And you'd see that the dictionary was formatted in a certain way, like the word would come first. Then you'd have the pronunciation, and normally those were in between two slanted lines. And then you'd have like VI if it's a verb, or N for noun. And then you'd have usage cases in italics. And so that I really enjoyed. If you can't tell, I can still remember it. Why? That's the dopamine hitting in. This is one thing that I've been told now, and I really believe it to be true, 99% anyway, that you don't get to pick what gives your brain dopamine. Because otherwise, if we did, we could just make hard work give us dopamine and we'd all be successful. But this took my fancy because it was open learning, right? There was a real world situation. It wasn't some calculus and n-dimension bullshit. It was like, hey, here's a problem. Solve it. I'll see you in 14 weeks at the end of the semester. And I loved it. Like I did a lot of work for it. It was a complicated project, at least back then. Programming has come a long way in terms of being simplified for the masses now. But I remember had to work with one other person. This other person, I don't think he was lazy, but it was just kind of useless. And at the end, I think I ended up doing almost all the project myself. He ended up doing like a really tiny bit of it, and it wasn't because I wanted to do everything myself. It's because literally he just couldn't keep up. Again, the ADHD brain, the speed at which it works, I didn't realize it then. I'm realizing it only now as I'm talking to you, or in the last maybe couple of months since this ADHD thing has popped up on my radar. But we got into the assessment where we had given our lecturer our result, our program. He'd seen how it worked, but he talked to us. See, this is the other thing I really liked. He got to talk to us and ask us why we did things the way we did, how we did things the way we did. And because I'd done it all, I really enjoyed that conversation. I could tell him I did this because of this, and I noticed this because of this. You know, sometimes the syntax in the dictionary was off, so I needed to put an exception for this. And I love that. He goes to talk to the person I was working with, the useless guy, and he didn't have any answers because he hadn't done anything because he was the useless guy. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, but that's how it felt. It's very difficult sometimes when your brain moves quickly to feel like you're held back. It's a really frustrating experience. And so I ended up getting I think I got a high distinction or distinction for that. It was like the best mark I had gotten in university for a very long time. And like next to me, he just got a pass. I mean, our project worked. No thanks to him, so I guess he couldn't fail, but he didn't get an equal mark to me, which I also thought was really cool. Because at the time I was going through uni, they had just decided to try all this group work stuff. It's like, oh, what's important for our grads? Oh, knowing how to work in a group. All right, we'll do all the coursework in groups. And have you ever done group work where it's worked well? Where you're the one with the ADHD brain, where your brain is working a million miles an hour, and you worked in a group, and other people can't keep up, or other people get bogged down by stuff that doesn't matter, or other people can't see the big picture. Has that ever gone well for you? Because it's never fucking gone well for me. Like to this day, I think group work is a bunch of bullshit. I'm not saying that learning how to work with other people is very important, but the whole idea that I'm going to be marked based on a lowest common denominator in my group is bullshit. But yeah, that was my educational experience was just a cascade down from the end of year 6 primary school, down, up until like the end of university. I got my science degree. I did this final year project, which I enjoyed. But other than that, I was happy to leave university in the dust. And to this day, I still have a disdain for formal education. I have a disdain for tests. I still have nightmares or recurring dreams about tests and being unprepared. Yet, and here's the kicker, I love learning. And I'm really good at it, but only when it's something I'm interested in. And to go back to how do you know if you have ADHD, I was like, well, surely everyone is like this, right? Surely everyone is more focused when they're doing something they enjoy. And yes, they are. But the difference, and this is a gray area, the difference is I understand that people with ADHD, people who don't have ADHD can make themselves do things they don't want to do more easily than people with ADHD or dopamine dysregulation can. And so if you're someone who has been battling, there's something that you know you have to do it, and you know you could do it, and you know you could probably even do it really easily, really well, wouldn't be that much of a hassle, but you just can't get yourself to start the bloody thing. You clean your room, you tidy your desk, you go for a walk, you plan, and you never do it. There's a high chance I would vouch. This is completely non-medical. Non-medical. I'm not a doctor. I had the marks to go into, but I'm not. But even if I had, it's all subjective. But there's a high chance that you have ADHD, or at the very least some sort of dopamine dysregulation, which, as I've said previously, tends to manifest, from what I understand, tends to manifest in very similar ways. And again, we can't train, at least that I don't know of, we don't get to pick what our brain associates dopamine with. And so if you're someone who just, you know there's something you should do and you know you could do it, and you just can't, not it's difficult, it's like just can't get myself to follow through, I would highly suggest you go get tested, or at the very least, in my case, have a conversation with someone who does have ADHD, and just start feeling like you're less alone, that you're not the only person whose brain works like this, number one. Number two, to actually understand your brain really does work differently from other people's, because it's so difficult, because it's your brain. How would you know? How you don't know what someone else's brain, how their brain works. And also for me, I didn't like thinking, oh, my brain works differently, because it sounded like ego. I was like, well, everyone's brain's the same, right? So everyone deals with the same issue. And this is where I was saying yesterday, some of the self-help stuff around just do it. Just do it. It's like really unhelpful for people with ADHD, because it's not a question of willpower. That was a big thing. And that's something that I'm still wrestling with. It's like willpower won't win over your ADHD. You need help, medication or otherwise, some sort of intervention. You need to understand your brain works differently, and you need to start learning. And this is something that I'm really digging deep into, and I'm by no means a master of it. I've barely scratched the surface. But you need to learn to work with this brain of yours, not against it. And the problem is, most of the self-help literature out there, it's not written for people such as me or you watching this. It's written for, the more normal, for want of a better word, or the not neurodivergent, neurotypical. Most of that stuff is written by neurotypical people. And you can tell because what they say makes sense. But that's not the point. Because you would have listened to a bunch of this stuff, tried it, and it just doesn't work, and you probably thought of yourself as A, a failure, or B, when they tell you it works if you do. So then the meaning to take from that is, if it didn't work, it's because I fucked up. Now, that could be the case, for sure. But if you have ADHD, that advice, well-meaning as it is doing you a huge disservice. Because they don't get it. Because our brains literally work differently. And this is part of the thing that I really want to work out is, okay, I know that it's impossible or extremely tough to decide what my brain associates dopamine with. So how can I work with that in order to actually create a quality of life that I want? In order to have the success I want, financial, in relationships, just in life in general, with my health and fitness. How can I have the success in life that I want, and I actually know that I could create? I fully know that I could create it, because if you're like me, you pass school with flying colors without trying, at least up to primary school. And so it's not the fact that you're dumb. You are smart. Your brain works a million miles an hour. So why don't you have the results to show for it? Well, you probably need to start learning, as I am, to work with your brain rather than against it. And so if any of these things that I've been talking about, you feel like you've been through something similar, especially the whole coasting through school to begin with, and then finding it harder and harder, or getting along better with your teachers than with your peers, or being drawn to do certain things that people told you were crazy, that you had no reason to want to pursue them, but it just took your fancy, and then you were gone. You're like a lightning bolt after it. None of those signs even put together are definitive. This is another thing with ADHD. There's very few, as I understand it, scientific tests where you go, yes, you have ADHD, barring structural differences in your brain, which is a subset, but not every case. So if that resonates with you, number one, I want you to know you're not alone. Me too. Number two, if you're watching this, I'd love to hear some of your guys' stories, because I think the more we can share stories, the more we can realize we're not alone, but we can also share strategies as to how we have learned to deal with it or manage it. I'd love to know, love to hear from you. And three, I'd love to, start seeing a world that is more educated on how to deal with people such as us, because we've got a lot to give. You and I both know that the way our brains work, there's a lot of stuff in here that's really way beyond what a neurotypical person could do. Creativity is a big one. Strategic thinking is another one. All these sort of high level skills that actually are very valuable. So it's not like we're all doom and gloom, but a lot of the education, a lot of the management, A lot of the teaching, it's all designed for neurotypical people, and it doesn't work for us. It, it's like that the calculus in n dimensions. Yeah, I could have wrapped my head around it if I knew why, if I was interested in it. And this is why I've always made an effort in all the online social stuff that I've done over the years to be interesting, number one. Yes, you know your substance. You should always know your substance, but you need to be able to engage with people and be, because without that engagement, you lose people such as me and you. So I'd love to start seeing more education for the educators and our society in general as to how they can tailor their education so it's more impactful on people like us, because I think that will have a disproportionate benefit, because I think there's a lot of gifts that our brain is giving us. Yes, there are some drawbacks, but we need to, magnify, leverage on our gifts and mitigate the weaknesses where we can. So that was my educational experience with what I've since come to realize in the past couple of months might be ADHD. Now, adult ADHD is another thing. I don't know if I had ADHD back then. I don't think my brain has changed much though over the years. I can't say I really think differently now than I did before. So I think there was a chance that I had it back then, but it wasn't the hyperactive type. That's another thing. If you are able to sit down, concentrate, and focus, that does not mean that you don't have ADHD. That is a subtype, but it's also a stereotype. And there's not the only type of ADHD, and it's not what I'm talking about here, because that's clearly not what I have. I was one of the quietest, best behaved kids in school. And I can sit down and concentrate, in inverted commas, although really when I'm sitting down concentrating, if you've bored me half the time, I'm daydreaming about something else. That's another thing. Daydreaming is a big thing for ADHD people, but it's not really daydreaming. It's like creative thinking. It's strategizing. It's thinking about new and wonderful ways to do weird shit. That's the thing. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you if you have similar stories, because I think if we can pull together, and then we can, help change the education and help change management and just help educate society in general as to how to deal with the weird and wonderful people that we are.